Welcome to the Providers Report, where we delve into the world of value-based healthcare. Our mission is to empower healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. Each episode, we explore best practices, innovative strategies, and real-world examples of how to achieve the highest standards in patient communication and outcomes. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare, one conversation at a time.
Hey guys, welcome to Better Doctor Project, where we interview healthcare providers to tap into their experiences so we can turn our challenges into our biggest strengths. We hope today's episode inspires you to take that next step to become who you want to be in practice. I'm Dr. Beck.
And I'm Dr. Mack.
Let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Beck. I cannot believe I'm actually saying this, but this is our official last episode of season 1. We're going to dive in today with Dr. James Leonard, a chiropractor that I actually graduated with just 3 years ago, who has been dominating the new technological changes that have popped up since COVID-19 first came about. He's going to chat with us today about how we can jump on this tech train, whether we're tech savvy or not, and allow these tools to improve patient communication, patient outcomes, and ultimately our relationships with patients all together. Here we go. Hey guys, we are here with Dr. James Leonard tonight, and on BDP, we're going to be chatting about two major things. One, how important telehealth is, especially in today's age and society, and then two, how technology can shape and transform healthcare. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things. We're excited to dive right in. But first, Dr. Leonard, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
I'm super excited to be here. Big fan of the show.
Thank you. We've loved having your support since day one, so thank you for that too.
No worries. I'm just a fan.
So to kind of start off this conversation, I first wanted to ask you, what's your ideal world of healthcare when it comes to technology? Like if you could envision where we can be with tech, the way healthcare should be, what's kind of your goal for all of this, and what do you see coming in the future?
Yeah, so I think we're working our way there right now, whether we like it or not. I would say there's three major pillars that we're seeing huge improvements in right now that I think are going to be long lasting and will really improve the entire landscape. And the first one's going to be with convenience. Technology makes getting healthcare super, super, super convenient, especially through a telehealth appointment. You can do it from your home. You can do it from your car. It really doesn't matter where you are as long as you have access to the internet. And it's the type of thing where you have a scheduled appointment for 9 a.m. You hop on the call at 8:59 and you're done whenever the appointment ends. So if it's a half an hour appointment, you end at 9:30. So that just is extremely convenient and can really open access and can also open access for populations that don't necessarily have the same standard of care as other places. And that's where I think the second pillar is going to be, and I think that's going to be in location independence. Because of telehealth, you're no longer sort of stuck with whatever care is available within your community or whether providers are available in your community. You have access to any provider who is licensed to treat within your state or within your country even. So it really opens the world of you can get the best possible providers or the best fit providers to help you navigate whatever your condition is, which is something that historically was reserved for only really extremely wealthy populations. And now it's just kind of common practice, or at least it's becoming common practice. And I'd say the third and probably most important improvement that's happening is in the realm of improved communication. I can't tell you how frequently I'll hear, especially when teaching chronic pain classes, how frequently I will hear there was a communication breakdown between my provider and I. I felt like I had a 10-minute window to have a conversation. It was pressured. He had things or he or she had things they wanted to talk about. I had things that I cared about, and it just didn't line up perfectly. And what do we expect when we only operate in one-to-one closed room conversations. Technology allows us to move into more asynchronous communication styles, which is really much more natural fit for our current world, which is basically email, text, phone calls, tweets, whatever. It's communication that happens over a course of time where you're able to sit down and provide really thoughtful information, but also really personalized connections that can, those questions that come after the appointment, you're able to actually address those, or keep that relationship and that conversation going over time as opposed to just within the confines of an individual appointment.
Oh, yeah. And I want to bring up the third pillar real quick as a personal story, because now the BDP world actually knows I happen to be 21 weeks pregnant right now, which is super exciting.
Congrats.
But thank you. Communication via technology, though, I've seen just be completely different with my OB compared to how things were in the past.
Sure.
So to give you kind of a perspective, we found out our gender pretty early on through genetic testing, which was great. And we actually went in for the actual testing, and the gender results were done before my next OB appointment. And so my nurse reached out to us via the internet, My Health or whatever the portal was online. And she's like, hey, do you guys want to know the gender of your baby now? Or would you like to wait until you see me in 2-3 weeks? Well, obviously we were pretty ready to know right then and there. So she actually sent us a PDF, and so we could open it on our own time. It didn't just pop up in the email or the message, whatever it was. And it was really cute, all pink and colored, announcing that we had a girl. And we were able to open that together. And my husband and I were able to, really experience that together. And it dawned on me a couple days later. I was like, that's so foreign compared to the way things used to be.
How cool is it though?
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. And to get a message from my OB's nurse, she was, sharing that moment with us too, and telling us how happy she was for us. And it was kind of surreal. And it makes you wonder, something that intimate and that special can be done using technology now. What are the, there's no limits to everything else we can do with healthcare, I would think.
For sure.
That's so empowering, though. That is the number one thing I think that we try to do as providers, and something we talk about on BDP all the time, is empowering our patients. And especially this year, I think that's so important, because there are so many people who are walking through the doors, not just that feel out of control in their health, but they also feel out of control in their lives, in their jobs, in the whole world at the moment, and this very somewhat tumultuous climate, and for a number of reasons. And I think that helping our patients, friends, family, colleagues, everybody have a little bit more power about their choices, and to feel like they actually have an understanding of what's going on is so vital to their success.
Absolutely. And you can follow, so as a provider, you can follow up through these asynchronous channels. If email is more appropriate, text is more, I text most of my patients because it's really easy and it's really personal. And you can follow up. So if I have a movement-based intervention with a patient, I can follow up and be like, hey, how's it going? Are you doing the exercises? Are they working? Are we getting the result that we want? If not, can we change them in between appointments? Can we correct the ship before you have to come back in for a full scheduled appointment? And you put the decision-making in the patient's hand at that point in time by saying, hey, you're in control here. I'm just kind of helping you navigate this road.
I love that. And it also encourages them to actually do it, right? So I know sometimes you'll give them maybe a movement-based exercise or assessment at home. And, by day 3, they might be like, oh, dang it, I was supposed to do that thing, right? And then they might not even tell you that until maybe the next visit, which could be several days a week, whatever it is later. So to have that check-in, not only would I think they feel like, wow, my doctor actually cares how I'm doing and is making sure I'm doing well, but it gives you the opportunity, like you said, to sort of alter your navigation through their care. But it helps just keep them on track as well. Hey, I know my doctor's going to probably check in with me, so let me make sure that I make the time to care for myself today. I think that's super important.
Well, and how easy is it to send just a quick little message? I mean, I've talked to some of my patients who have gotten, for example, advanced imaging done, and then they're waiting sometimes weeks before they even get a call to schedule a follow-up visit to go over them, or maybe they're waiting several days to even know what the results were. Is everything okay? Whereas, again, with my OB, when I had more testing done, or when I had an ultrasound, for example, my 20-week ultrasound, they sent me a message on that portal like within hours saying, hey, your ultrasound's been read. We just want you to know everything looks great. And obviously there are different protocols they're going to take when things don't look so great. But how nice is it to have that option where I don't have to sit back and wait and worry, and I know that they care and they want me to know, and I don't have to go X number of days being concerned. It's a surreal time. It really is.
Sure. And it fits even better. Like, we can take this out of our arena, or my arena, with musculoskeletal healthcare. And we live in the time of COVID. And I've had multiple COVID tests this year because I've traveled a fair amount, and it's important that you stay on top of it. And I can't even tell you, every time I've gone for a test, I get a phone call or a text message or an email within 24, 48 hours, depending on when the test results come back. It saves a lot of exposure by not having to go into those offices to get the test results.
Absolutely. Speaking of COVID, by the way, that's obviously changed a lot of things in healthcare. And I'm assuming most of us know that it's changed technology within healthcare. So that's one really good example. We have these, electronic online messages about our results when it comes to testing. But how else do you think this pandemic has influenced telehealth and technology within healthcare?
I think it just put the entire system on warp speed. I mean, the learning curve would just happened overnight. I went from having really basic and frustrating conversations with, family members is an easy population to blame. Having very frustrating conversations with, no, this is a Zoom call, or this is a FaceTime call. This is not a Skype call. We need you to be on the right account in order for us to be able to connect. That completely went away overnight. I see most of my patients are geriatric. I mean, most patients are 50 plus, and they have no problem meeting me online, having a phone call, discussing everything through email, being in the teleconference at the time when it's supposed to happen. It's amazing. And that happened overnight, and it happened because of COVID.
Yeah, growth is sometimes uncomfortable, but necessary.
Yeah, you can Zoom with your grandparents now, and that was not an option before.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. I mean, it's just funny to me that it took something so dreadful to bring this out, but I think eventually it's going to be something really positive. I mean, there are people all over the country who are grandparents, for example, and want to see their grandkids, and now they have this extra way of doing it that maybe they hadn't thought of.
Especially for those in nursing facilities too. Right now, obviously, in the geriatric population, depression is a concerning issue, and certainly right now, I know I'm in Florida, and we've had our range of cases here. So my grandmother is 95. She's in a facility, and Zoom has been one of the best things that we've had since February. We hadn't been able to see her since February. That's a huge, huge chunk of time for anyone, let alone a 95-year-old who's stuck in her apartment. So having that ability to see her and talk to her and have her look forward to that has been really, really big.
Yeah. And as a provider, there's a handful of patients that I manage that it's really, they don't need a lot of intense care. They just need to be checked in on. And honestly, I don't have the magic fix in my exercise knowledge to be able to fix your neck at 85 years old. I can help you manage it. And that just requires there's no more, if you get to a point with these patients, you're there aren't any more exercises. You just have to do the basic ones regularly. And that's how you're going to find improvement here. And that delivering that message, if a patient comes into your office for that conversation, they oftentimes leave frustrated. Whereas if you have that conversation through technology, through a video chat, through a phone call, or even just through a proactive text message where you say, hey, how's it going? It's received completely differently. Now you're a provider that cares about your patients, as opposed to a provider who's just kind of wasting your patient's time.
Yeah. I know 2 primary care physicians in my city who actually have a direct primary care facility. And so they, even before COVID, were already kind of onto this trend without realizing how big of a deal it was going to be. And that's what they do. I mean, think about all the patients they have on medications, for example, or patients with, long-term medical conditions that just need to be checked in on every couple months, couple weeks, what have you. And so just to be able to drop a text message like, hey, you started this medication 2 months ago. How's it going? Instead of dragging them all the way to the office to ask them in person, hey, we started this medication 2 months ago. How's it going? It's just completely transformed things. And so they have this really cool system where, and it's less common in the Midwest, but you just pay this monthly membership to be a patient at their office, and you get unlimited access to them. You get unlimited care. It's highly discounted care as well. I mean, to have blood work done, it's like $4 or $5. It's surreal to me. But what I thought was really cool pre-COVID is when they told me about this, the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, your patients must feel like you're always there for them. And to have a primary care like that, that goes a long way.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting financial models that are coming out as this is going to happen. Healthcare is changing, and it's super interesting to be a part of and really fun to watch. The retainer fee conversation in that sort of subscription service to healthcare, there's a couple companies that are doing a really, really, really good job at it, and it's going to be interesting to see how it changes the landscape through time. But I want to comment another way, even that it changes things even past that, is I live in Virginia at the moment, but most of my patients are in Utah because I practiced in Utah right when I came out. So I'm still able, living in Virginia and kind of splitting time between places, able to have conversations and be available to those patients, even though I'm not in the same state as them. And that's within the scope of practice for those states, it's really, really interesting. You're taking away a lot of the location dependence of who can I affect through technology. And it can be really powerful, especially if the patient is someone who is just like, they just need to be reassured and they want to be reassured by someone they already have rapport with.
One thing I love about this is that a theme I keep hearing from things both of you are saying is that it seems like it's naturally shifting towards patient-valued, patient-centric care, which is really, really cool because unfortunately our current system really doesn't value what the patient values, and we don't use outcome measures sometimes that are based on patient value. So I think that's a really exciting trend that's going to become more and more prominent as we go towards the opening up for access and location and convenience, as well as direct primary care models and other such models as we see those evolve. I'm really excited because we needed a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kicker to that is changing the incentive structure for the providers, right? Yeah. In a fee-for-service model, you only get paid when you do certain deliverable services. Mm-hmm. Well, that's oftentimes tied really closely to your patient lifetime value. And if your patient lifetime value is only the amount of times that person in that specific city is going to be able to come in and see me for an adjustment, well, that incentive structure doesn't necessarily push people in the right direction. It doesn't scream patient values to me. Whereas the patient population you can build through telehealth is I can be this patient's go-to guy for back pain, for neck pain, for the rest of the time that I'm in practice, no matter where I am. So your conversation is now about, okay, how do I help set you up to be good in 5 years, as opposed to how do I change this today? And you want to have your measurables. You want to be working towards. I do a lot of mechanical diagnostic, McKenzie technique stuff, so I'm always trying to see symptom change really quick. But the conversation at the beginning is, hey, this is your spine for the rest of your life. Let's go ahead and try and make some plans about what it's going to be like in the future.
Absolutely, I love that, and I see that obviously you're changing the communication style between you and your patients. Has anything changed for you in communication with other providers? Obviously, it's easy to hop on a Zoom now. I know that we really love to see that collaboration between different kinds of providers. That's why we're doing this on BDP for all kinds of providers. Has there been any change in how you communicate with other healthcare professionals?
I can name one specific example that I think has been really transformative and would never have happened any other year. I have a patient who I'm seeing out in Utah who had a really, really, really major trauma. She was paragliding and dropped 100 feet out of the air. And it's one of those things where that is not in my scope to manage whatsoever. Like that is out of scope for me. I'm not really that useful of a provider for her to go see. But as a friend, as someone who is a provider for her, I have been able to help her navigate the road and the conversations and help to really fill in some of the gray lines. Like I'm like, okay, well, let me see the imaging report. Okay, well, this is kind of what they're trying to say. Like you should have this conversation with your other provider, like your actual provider, and then being able to step in and being able to just kind of have more peer-to-peer conversations to make sure that everyone is on the same page the whole way through. And that's something that I could never imagine being in that sort of role before this year.
So there are lots of pros all the way through, regardless of how you're choosing to use telehealth and technology right now. Are there any cons? Are there any things that you've found that maybe are setting you back or hurdles you've had to overcome with your patients?
Yeah, I mean, there are major limitations to operating through virtual mediums entirely. Your physical exam, it's just not the same quality that it would be in person, right? And oftentimes patients aren't the best self-reporters. So your things like muscle strength, reflexes, dermatome signs, like that stuff just doesn't come through as strong as it would with in-person visits. I know both of you can probably attest this as well. Like how often do you have a patient that has true muscle weakness, but like never realized it, right? It happens frequently, and it's hard to diagnose through telehealth. So I think you just got to be quick to refer for stuff if it's even a little bit questionable, you just got to be super quick to refer for that type of stuff. I think it's also, as a provider, like not being able to touch your patients and having like a bit, like some of your most powerful interventional tools not available, like that can be kind of frustrating too. I don't think living in a telehealth space all of the time, I don't think that's 100% satisfying for most chiropractors. And certainly I'm not going to adjust people through these mediums. And I like adjusting people, and I think it's an extremely powerful tool. But you know, it does serve a purpose in expanding access.
I think there are certain professions too, it probably lends itself a little bit more to. I know for one of the things I'm hearing a lot from my patients are those who have chosen to continue like mental health counseling or mental health therapy through this time, which has been so important, I think, especially while people are stuck at home. Sometimes it's the only person that they're actually talking to, right? And I know a lot of them have loved that there's easier access for that. They don't have to get up off their couch to go sit on someone else's couch, right? But a lot of them don't feel it's the same, which I think we deal with a lot in our profession too, because they're not getting that hands-on care, and sometimes they're not getting that face-to-face care. I know there have been several therapists in my town that have started meeting with clients outside and walking like parks. We have a lot of parks in our town, things like that, to overcome that for those patients that really have trouble feeling heard over telehealth. And I think some of that is because, you know, your brain processes a little bit differently, right? When you're on a video, it's harder to sometimes read emotions or body language, especially if you only see from the shoulders up, you know, and things like that. So I think the communication style changes a little, but I would imagine that certain professions have to have some in-person time versus others.
Yeah, and I think another really clear example is the field of dermatology. I've seen like quite a few changes, and dermatologist friends kind of have brought it up to me, where a patient can just take a photo of a rash or take a photo of a skin irritant and send it in and be like, what's going on here? And a lot of the time, like they're able to deliver like a pretty solid answer and understanding and a plan for how to manage that. Yeah, I mean, it's just so powerful in that regard.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to something I want to bring up in our conversation tonight when you first started speaking on this episode. You know, what telehealth and what technology can do too is reach populations that otherwise wouldn't have access. So in a similar boat, like imagine somebody in a foreign country that might have a derm problem, or imagine somebody who is having such a mental health issue where they're not going to leave their home, or maybe they're too sick to leave their home. Or, I mean, I could go on with a million examples, but how great is it for them to not put seeing a doctor off for months, even years, because they can just contact them over the internet. There are even people, and I think both of you know this as well, there are some patients that just hate going to the doctor. Let's be real. They avoid it like the plague. I mean, I cannot even tell you how many times I have to speak to a 50-year-old male about how important it is to see your primary care physician.
I did it today.
Yeah, literally. These things happen. And I think for those people, I mean, if their wives or friends can even just convince them to do a quick, update with the PCP online like this, that's going to be less of a commitment for them in theory. It's going to seem less scary, less frightening. And same thing for those people who have lack of access. They're going to be able to finally, have some kind of communication with the doctor that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get. And that is so valuable. What illnesses are we going to catch that we would have otherwise missed? What illnesses are we going to catch at an earlier stage instead of them coming in as a last resort, having stage 4 cancer, or finally getting to that end stage point. So I think long term, we're going to see that we're helping people sooner, which we all know is huge.
It's going to be really interesting to look at the population level data that comes out of the next couple of years, especially like after these major changes. And if there is actually a shift in that chronic disease state, or the presence of chronic disease state, or even sort of the interventional paths and choices within chronic disease management. I think it's going to be super interesting to see what the data shows.
Yeah, one thing that I just thought of too, I wonder pre-COVID, and this would obviously take years to develop as well, but I wonder what the current percentage is for patients over the age of 40 or 50 who actually regularly see a primary care physician. How might that change in 3 to 5 years when telehealth becomes even more common? Will that number go up? Are we going to see more ongoing care versus going in every 5 to 10 years when there's a huge problem? I almost wonder, are we going to see more, basically, are we going to see better management?
I think it's really interesting because I'm just coming to this realization now. This is a way that I used to access care and just thought it was like sort of a perk of being a provider, where I would just text my other provider friends and be like, hey, like, I'm having this problem. Can you help me out? What do I do? Who do I go see? Where do I go?
Such a good point.
That is no longer the provider inner circle. It's now you can establish that same rapport with your primary care provider. And you can generally, a lot of the time, especially like the big health corps, they have portals that you can text through, and you can immediately sort of open a episode of care. And then that is something that can just kind of be ongoing. And you have a team who you have rapport with from in-person experience and out-of-person experience. And then they have all the context of conversation that's kind of developed over a long period of time, which is, that's what the value of the old-time family physician is that long-term rapport and understanding of condition.
What's interesting too about that though is that also changes, in my mind, the relationship between the practitioner and the provider. Like you said, you kind of text your friends. It puts you on this same level, like, hey buddy, I have this thing going on. What's going on with it, right? Well, I think part of that, having that old rapport and a little bit of a prior style for that family physician, several years ago, is, oh, well, the doctor said this, and you don't question it. Like, we still see that generationally sometimes with our patients, right? Oh, the doctor said I should do this. I'm not going to question it. And now we start to see this trend of like, well, hey, I have Dr. Google in my pocket, so I'm going to question it because I also found this and this and this and this and this, which is actually really cool and can sometimes lead to some really empowering conversations with patients. But I'm curious to see how that's going to change too, now that we're sort of opening up, in my mind, like you said, that shift where we're now able to just text, and I don't want to say more casually talk to our patients, because obviously there should always be professionalism there, but I'm wondering if that's going to change the way that healthcare and practitioners are viewed, whether for better or for worse. I'm just wondering if there'll be a shift there.
It'll be interesting. I will say a really common text that I will get from patients is like, here is a YouTube video. Is this going to work for me? And it's which is super helpful, because now I'm actually in a role where I can inform them, hey, you've got extension bias back pain. Like, I don't think like doing repetitive knees to chest with weight on the end is a good idea for your long-term. It just doesn't fit my understanding of your condition. And it's because all of the information is out there now. Like if you want to know anything, you can learn it on YouTube right now. But the difficulty and the really important role that providers have, especially I think moving into the future, is helping to kind of navigate that road and be like, look, you can learn anything you want, but this is very specific for you, and this is how you should kind of navigate that. And I'm not the man here. I don't know everything, but I have an idea about certain tells that would make your back pain respond to something and not other things.
Right.
There's a whole classifying thing. There's a whole conversation there.
I think we have several here we could extrapolate on. But yeah, I think it's really cool that the three of us are in agreement of how many positive things technology and telehealth are going to bring. But I think it's great that we're also recognizing, hey, there's always going to be limitations. And it's just a matter of understanding that and moving forward and putting patients first and just simply doing what's best for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say a few other limitations that are still kind of big and pervasive at the moment. Number one is that the reimbursement parity just isn't quite there. It's still so emerging. It's so state dependent, and it's so dependent on each individual case, each provider licenseship. It's just there's no common ground there yet, and that's going to take years to develop. And especially as a chiropractor, I can't work with Medicare and provide any of these services because Medicare only reimburses adjustments. And I am not helping a patient with ADLs is not an adjustment. Therefore, it's not reimbursable through Medicare. And that's a major limitation.
So for providers who are listening to this right now, obviously there are some of those limitations, but how can we start right now, tomorrow, next week, in providing telehealth services for our patients? What's the first step?
I think I learned this actually in my first associateship, and I would say it's one of the most important things that I've learned as a provider up till now. And that is have a personal connection with your patient. And I think the asynchronous communication portals is so big. I think every provider should ask permission from their patients before you do this. But I think every provider should have a Google Voice number that is strictly tied to their business. And you should give that number to your patients, and you should open that channel of communication. After your first adjustment, after whatever your first in-person visit is, follow up with your patient and check in. How did it go? Are you sore? And then send a follow-up text message to that being like, today we talked about this. I think you have these problems. This is what I am suggesting you do moving forward. This is the plan that we talked about. Do you have any questions to that? And you can just rapid fire those texts out, especially with new patients. I think if you add that, you will be astounded at what happens to your retention rate. You will get patients that will come to you for problems that you just never imagined they would come to you. And you're going to have to get good at giving answers like, that is not my specialty. I do not know. But that's okay. You can police yourself. So I've suggested this to other providers before, and providers oftentimes get defensive of their home time. And it's, hey, well, how am I not going to get bothered at like 9 p.m. when I'm with my kids or when I'm doing this thing? And you can turn off all notifications on this Google Voice number and just check it 2 or 3 times a day. You'd be surprised how patients actually reach out through it. But for the ones that do reach out, it's extremely meaningful. And every single patient I've ever done this with has reported that they absolutely love it and they think it's something that's super, super helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Google Voice would obviously be a great resource. And I know there's some EMR companies that have it built in, which is really nice, as well as, so for example, my office has a company that we outsource to called DearDoc, and it's also linked to all of our patients' phone numbers. So it appears to them as a separate phone number, but we have direct access to all of their, basically all their information. And that's super useful too. Like today, for example, I wrote a referral for one of my patients to see another healthcare provider. And just so she was in the know, I sent her a message. Hey, your referral has been sent to XYZ place. You can expect a phone call within the next 3 to 5 business days. And did I have to send that? Probably not. But how great is she going to feel knowing, 1, it's been done, and 2, she knows she can hang tight and that other location is going to reach out to her. So the good news is there are several outlets where people can kind of dive into this. Have you also found any resources on how to just become more comfortable with telehealth, like any particular YouTube channels or podcasts or books or websites? I mean, is there anything you found online that helped you prepare for this, or did you just kind of, I guess through COVID, we all kind of learned on the fly, but is there anywhere else we can send our listeners?
It helped that I have a pretty strong and firm background in McKinsey. Like mechanical diagnostic therapy, just by nature, is patient driven. And it was just immediately like, oh, cool. Now I just have to do this without touching my patient. And you get really creative because then you start being like, how do I increase the load? What do I do? I will say when it comes to musculoskeletal care, we're kind of working with the deck stacked in our favor when it comes to our interventions, because most MSK problems get better when you move them. So generally it's about, how do I get this person to move this in a way that improves their condition and doesn't like provoke it? How do I reassure them about limited functional capacity and say, hey, these are the things that you can't do currently. Let's make a plan for how you can sort of decrease intolerance and get better at doing those things. And for the vast majority of musculoskeletal conditions, especially back pain, I mean, you're going to hit a pretty good percentage if you just move stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to just like being confident in your delivery and your conversation, being extremely authentic in that conversation, and then also understanding your limitations there and being like, hey, we're going to do this for this many visits. We're going to do this for 4 visits. We're going to do this for 2 visits. We're going to do this for 3 visits. We're going to work on this, and this is what I want to see.
Yeah.
If we don't see this, this is your next step.
I love it. And so many characteristics you just pointed at are some of the things we're really trying to help our listeners gravitate toward. You know, we should be authentic. We should, focus on learning some of these soft skills to just make us better at this, right? We should be confident and feel comfortable and put our patients first. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so. And there are a ton of resources out there. There's been a couple telehealth CEs that have been put forward by the ACA, the American Chiropractic Association. And I think there's like a lot of gyms built through there as well, with some really great docs that are awesome follows on YouTube and everywhere else.
Awesome. I will link those in the show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for this conversation tonight, because we touched on so many great things and I feel like everyone's going to be able to learn something valuable from this. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Leonard. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I honestly feel like I could talk to Dr. Leonard about just about anything for hours and hours, and I hope you guys felt the same way. He is a wealth of knowledge and such a good communicator, so we hope you loved hearing from him today. For more of Dr. Leonard, please check out his website at virtualbackdoc.com or his Instagram page at virtualbackdoc, D-O-C at the end. I'm sure we will be having him again on BDP for a future episode though, so hang tight for that too. Just as an FYI, now that season 1 is officially wrapped up, Dr. Mack and I will actually be taking some holiday time off to relax, prep for my first baby coming in a few months, and ultimately to provide you and prepare for some super stellar content and upgrades for BDP 2021. We have a ton of ideas and fun coming your way that we cannot wait to share. The official first episode of season 2 is going to be on February 2nd. But don't worry, we're going to keep you in the loop via Instagram every step of the way. So if you're not already following us, please do so at Better Doctor Project. As always, check out betterdoctorproject.com for today's show notes with links to any of the great resources mentioned in today's episode. What can you do between now and our first episode of season 2? Well, catch up on old episodes that maybe you've missed, look on our website for tangible content and recommendations, and obviously continue to keep up with us on Instagram for continued content, tips, clinical pearls, funny memes, literally anything, and obviously ways you can choose to be a better provider every single day for your patients. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. We appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
We loved connecting with you today on this episode of the Better Doctor Project. We can't wait to share our next podcast with you in just 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Until then, pop over to Instagram to follow us at Better Doctor Project or keep up with us at betterdoctorproject.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Provider's Report. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. To stay updated with our latest episodes, subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen. For more resources and continuing education opportunities, visit our website. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our patients and truly set a standard for value-based healthcare.